Okay, so first I'd like to thank you for your patience. Thank you that you survived and visit the last lecture of the last day. So I think it's cool that you attend my presentation, and I tried to make it as interesting as possible for you. Today we'll talk about very interesting testing of migration of backend, and this is a practical case. So I would like to start with a couple of words about myself. I have quite an interesting double life. I'm a tester since 2010, so since quite a long time. I worked in big companies, small companies, and now I'm testing warehouse logistics. Parallel to that, I'm admin of scientific blog dedicated to space. I'm publishing articles in various magazines, on portals. You can read my articles on Harbor. Recently, I published it less frequently, but also I published some articles dedicated to space, like Medusa, and less known portals. Correspondingly, at the last conference, I made my presentation on combining experience from space and testing. Now I will have purely technical presentation with one section dedicated to the space. Okay, what is the migration, so that you understand correctly what I mean by that? So we have a product is being developed, growing for several years. Everything is growing. Everything that is growing is to change. So the number of customers might change, load on various components vary, and at some point we see that some components of the backend, which worked efficiently at first, now they have to be replaced. We have to replace them with something. And before we talk about practical methods to do it, we have to think about the special features of this task. For myself, this migration project was quite unusual, because for many years before that, in many companies, when I worked in many companies, I knew where to take test plan from, because we have a description of a feature, we have analysts who describe what is there to be done, and this is the backbone of the test plan. Then we have the knowledge of product. We have this knowledge. We know what to focus on. This is more reliable, this is less reliable. And for example, we know the risks. We take notice of some areas. And even if it's informal document, even if it's something that you know only in your mind, this is something like test strategy that you can use. How we start testing, when we do the testing, when we finish the testing, which criteria to use for that. And the reason has to be used, because analysts are fine, but some things they might not predict, might not think of, and as a result, based on the results of all that, in principle, independent of whether the document is formal or informal, or is there just something in your head, you have some vision of how, when, and what you are going to test. Another clarification, what and how it is done. So if we analyze what I've been doing before the start of this project. So we have a functionality, it's either new or changed to the existing one. I mean, the scope, the coverage. So in this rectangular fields is something that we test. This rectangular covers the new functionality and change to the existing one. This rectangular is wider because if we have more new things, we try to look around more. Yeah. Next one. So at the project, we can have a set of automatic tests of two levels. These are UI tests, small automatic tests, which check these fragments of the functionality, and they are launched very frequently after each deploy and at each platform, and they run quite quickly, and they try to allocate the infrastructural problems. Something wrong uploaded, something wrong switched on or switched off, etc. And this is a very useful thing. And these migration tests of UI level, they are launched less frequently, once before standard 2 weeks release, and basically they just check fragment of the functionality. So these are tests written by myself, and this piece of functionality, well, I could make not only manual but automatic testing. I knew that this thing is covered and this checked, and I was thinking whether it's useful from the point of view of ROI and efficiency, and I came to the conclusion that maybe it's not that efficient, because same things are checked over and over again. And there was a time when these tests were useful, because when we developed merged functionality, and the developer did not understand the developer and changed the logic of the application. It was checked with the test, and we caught this problem and fixed it at the intermediate level. This is the current status, but now the task. So, okay, that was quite clear and adjusted, well-tuned, but now we have to test migration. What is the potential problem or potential challenge here? Well, here we have one requirement which is completely non-formalizable. This is everything should be working in the same way as earlier, but how can we test that? How can we make testing based on this requirement? So we started to think about that, and there were some options, and some of the options were inadequate, completely inadequate, because full regression would be a nice option, but maybe I will. So, some of you, does some of you use full regression? Okay. That would be quite interesting, but is completely non-usable within this project. Why? Because migration is done in small pieces, and if we make full regression, we won't have resources for that. Please recall this website. So this is the standard testing, and we don't have any resources for standard regression. So the second option, which is quite logical, but let's think. These are some features, some old features. There are some requirements, and we can make test plans based on that. Seems logical, but not enough. Why? Because changes in backend are more architectural, and requirements are functional. So they can be not compatible with each other. For example, we use SQL database, where this new backend version uses two classes of instances. The first class of instances is responsible for representation of data, and the second for manipulation or changes in the data. And in the process of migration, the first instances migrate, and then the second type, the second class. And it overlaps, but there are some differences, architectural differences still. And this cannot be removed from the requirements, because now in the architecture I can say that if we check the instances which are responsible for visualization of data, it's enough for me to look at data which been input already. And if we look at the instances which change the data, we have to make actions ourselves, so that we have some actions which are the result of these instances like work. And yeah, it's interesting, quite interesting. Statistics, Waterhouse, some other people do. Sometimes people around you are smarter than you. Maybe they've got some new idea or read something smart. And recently we've hired a tester, and I included this task into the interview. I was interested whether people from other companies, products, projects can settle this issue.
To my luck, it was written in a book that was published several years ago, so it was quite easy, and there were some good solutions there, and we didn't do that. So as far as it turned out, there were several good situations, funny situations, so to say, because those people were speaking according to their own experience. So, for example, a test manager comes to a company, and he has the only version of full regression if other testers are not very qualified. He did not have any other options. It is not effective, it is bad, yes, but if we don't do that, then everything is going to fall apart. There were also people who came in from really good projects, successful projects, small ones, but all automated. So it means that they had to start auto tests here. And auto tests, it is not enough. We need auto tests and something else. So it was a really good and interesting issue for the interview to see how the person thinks and what is his or her opinion and experience in work. I don't understand this, the sense of this picture, but still a good illustration to this slide. Anyway, let's go on. So I need to say that I was very lucky because almost all of you know the difference between a tester and a QA. So a person and role. So basically, the person who promotes the quality all over the place, so that business analysts, developers, support, all work for the quality, and it can be quite difficult sometimes. I'm lucky because when the first versions of this product was created, even when we didn't have any testers in our project, we implemented straight away a very important idea for the quality maintenance. So we had to write auto tests, unit tests, and some other bit higher interaction systems. So they were made in very good way, and it was a BDD approach. So it's a mini framework, and even though sometimes we had to do some things quickly, we had some challenges, we still managed to have this necessity to create those tests. And as a result, I can say that I cannot be very precise, but still, according to the data that I have gathered, at this level we have about 80% of coverage, even more. And it is still growing. And it is really a lot, and it helped us with many challenges and problems. So, thanks to everything I have done and my team has done, we have created a really healthy testing pyramid, which tells all the successes without your participation in it. So we can see that really good people created this thing. This healthy testing pyramid helped us in this project. Without it, it would have been really, really sad for us. So you can see those peaks and regressions, but it was not enough alone either. So we also needed manual testing. Do you know these people here? Perfect. So this picture is called Find 5 Differences. You can try to find them or ask me afterwards, or I can show you afterwards. So there are actually 5 differences in those 2 pictures. Why did I decide to show you these 2 pictures? Well, for manual testing, the most important task in such migration process is this check, this verification. The only requirement is to make the new one work as good as the old one. So how do we do it? We open the new and the old ones and the same data and compare them. So we do the same things, same actions on the new and the old one, and to see that the results are the same. So basically, we compare the new and the old things all the time. So there's some there are benefits of such of this approach. So it is not automated, but it is implemented with the help of some instruments. So basically, if I begin with some reports and introduce it into a program that creates diff, I will have really reasonable data. So diff is our friend. It was my friend, at least in this project. So this GIF, you can see Voyager 2 that was launched in 1970s. Why did I use this picture? It is an interplanetary station. It passed 4 planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So you can see those orbits in different colors in the picture. So this Voyager has been on 40 or even more years, and it is still actually flying somewhere. There is an onboard computer, and they still even have connection with this thing, with this Voyager. So for us, it was a rather long and multi-stage release process. Each piece of this migration had to go through different stages and steps. So those are the stacks that I have mentioned before. New functionality, where it was necessary for the new functionality to go through those steps. And if the old tests had to be complied with, the new ones were also written for them, and we had the coverage up to 100%, very close to 100%. It was really cool. Something very necessary for us because it was kind of a storage system. If we show our client another amount, then he will be irritated. Did you have such a case when you bought something in a shop and after that manager called you and said, okay, so there is no more goods left that you have ordered, and probably you were irritated by it. So this is oversell situation, when they have sold you something that is not there anymore. So the same works here in our system. The normal system that I'm working in is trying to fight the situation, oversell situations. So the coverage was very good and it was the very beginning. So let's go further on. We have a set of production data. This database is working with events, and this set of events was downloaded and launched locally. And after that, the tester was comparing old and new data. So on the same set of events that were for real clients, the result has to be the same. But it's not all. Very interesting feature. A test plan that was made by a tester, by a developer almost fully. Why? Because a developer was the subject who made the black box white, because he knew that in this particular place, this piece that was changed, it is developed in other places, and then these places have to be checked. So thanks to that, we knew what exactly was changed at this particular stage. And on the one hand, we didn't test different and unimportant stuff, and we were not risking that we would skip something. We had 3 deployments: UA, staging, and production, and we are checking the old and the new QAs. Manually, we check them. They were different clients, effective tenants, and it was compared both for the new and for the old ones. Then we released it in the off mode. Why was it so difficult and long for us? Because unfortunately migration, even in the off mode, could have damaged something. So that's the specificity of this process. So we had to make a release in the off mode and check it for staging. It was a manual check. There was another check at production stage. And after that, the test plan could change. Sometimes we did not have resources to check the full number of tests that we did have, manually, I mean, and sometimes instead of and then this piece that was changed was launched in several places, and we could check it only in one place. So basically, it was possible to do. So we were checking it in the on mode and staging, and we had this prod staging slot. So for production, it has basically 2 heads. So we have a front end, and a lot of backend is one head, and front end and a bit of backend is the second part, and the body was a little part of backend. So it all was changed. It is the new version for production, and it was changed, and it was nice. And here you can see that we could compare what used to be and what actually was the new issue, the new part. So QA and staging was cleaned sometimes, and at production stage, all the broken data was there, and everything that we have changed, it all had to be the same, even though we changed it. And we also find the pool of loyal clients who wanted to experiment, and we sent them the new pieces if they did not have any complaints, then we send it to new clients and so on. So basically it was a very, very long release, just like the Voyager trip. So let's speak about the Thorns. Thorns is negative experience, but useful experience that we received. Or at least that experience, that negative experience that we could have received, but we avoided it. So it is very important here, because there should be a good maturity, both for the management and for the other employees, because we need to understand, and this understanding should not evaporate. So the migration takes a bit more than a year, and there is a team that is ready to make new features, and we need all to make all new features all the time, because there are competitors who are trying to go further on. The full team, people, get money, but they are not doing any new features, and it is because there is this understanding that we are ready for this migration, we are ready to give resources for that, and we are going to keep this team. So we have to have this understanding. And sometimes it can be a threat for some companies, because the situation in companies with a less mature understanding of what they have to do, it could have been some problems there. So this is when the developer made our black box white, so we can see changes. Unfortunately, it has disadvantages as well. Our developer is not a tester. He sees some things in a different way, and something that you could have tested in a different way, he could just skip it. So it depends on the developer, the understanding of the architecture of the structure and so on. So it is very good when developer has it. And it can be a potential problem as well. And here is the psychological story. There is the migration project, and after that, any problem that you might have, no matter who or what breaks, it will be connected to migration. Just because these people do something that they don't understand, they are trying to find something in with our car, and if something has happened, then it's their fault, not ours.
So, in fact, what do we have here? So yes, we had to allocate some resources. People come and say that this is the problem. We have to check whether it's ours. But very often the problem is not ours, but it's good. And very often when we study it, it's quicker for us to fix it, even if it's not the consequence of migration. And new versions is normally has to be faster, better than the old one. But it's not always the case, because the product company, which earns on customers, 99% use the system the way it was intended. They take the right path. But some customers, for example, once in a while, they go the wrong path. In case when we have a lot of instances, he creates like hundreds of instances, he creates tens of thousands of instances, and it gets stuck, but we never expected it, and it gets stuck, and the result is quite funny. Very often the side effect is that it comes to the situation when these solutions, the new solutions, had to be optimized in you. Yes. The profit. What profit are we getting? So it's not quite small, because this new migration, it is really much better than the old one. And actually, without getting deeper into the details, going further into details, I can say that, for example, some peculiar features of third-party services, some peculiar features of their availability were quite painful for us. For example, there is a server, it collapses, then it's, of course, not very pleasant, not very positive. But at the same time, there can be a service with a level of reliability. It can also fail, but it's much softer for us. So the next advantage is that we have better and better coverage. Probably you've noticed that when you develop something, it's better to make it all well from the very start. Because if you've done something wrong with the technical area, you will never get financing to improve that. It works, okay, then let it work. And here we have an opportunity to, yes, sure, we didn't have the full carte blanche, we couldn't make it for thousands of years, which would be ideal. But of course, we had some limitations, like resources, time, but in general, we managed to make it well. So our coverage was good from the very start, and it became even better. And some sports which were covered worse because of the hurry, etc. But now they are covered much better. And there was clear understanding why it was like that. I don't know if you managed to introduce this necessary, understanding of the quality, but in many projects would suffer without the regression quite soon. And we introduce new useful features. What do I mean? I mean, for example, this system with two heads which swap, probably we would get it even without the migration project. But we made it in connection with this project. Maybe we could get it later or earlier, but it became better, much better. Because some time ago, we tested, let's say, we made a release, and at the third stage of testing in the prod, we made it after the release. Now, we can test it before the release in full-scale release mode. This is very convenient. And another convenient feature is that as we systematically go through the functionality, that we can dig out some sports which were forgotten earlier. Because, for example, sometimes it happened that, for example, once I found a big layer of potential problems which were like, we had one instance analytic, and we have the second instance described by analysts. They are interacted in some way, but nobody thought about that. They tested it, they launched it, everything seemed to work, nobody was complaining. But then I've seen that if we combine these instances, then we get a lot of bugs, because people just didn't think about that they can be combined. But it was possible. And using this systemic approach, step-by-step processing of everything that is migrating, we could catch these problems, these bugs, and get quite good results in terms of like finding some bugs and fixing them. And correspondingly, that's the end. Thank you. So now Q&A session, please, if you ask your questions, if any. Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. I haven't heard anything about non-functional tests, and how do you, without some performance testing or security testing, let's say, how can you state that your data were migrated well and there have been no new problems identified? Very good question. As far as the load stress testing is concerned here, okay, in some sense, load checking of the load is the real prod, monitoring of the prod and how it works. Because we have a scalable system, in case we lack resources, we just have to buy servers on the go, optimize them by changing the code and let the servers free and rent it out to those who sell it. And this is systems under load. And also we have very specific distribution of the load. For example, the most loaded day for us is Monday, because on weekends people buy a lot of stuff, Friday, Saturday, and on Monday all this bunch of orders is to be processed. This is the most loaded day. And another very loaded day, it's like this Black Friday, that we have to prepare to it, we have code freeze, and we are also expecting that. And also we had years when we were growing so quickly that every next Monday was a little bit higher load than the Black Friday of the previous year. So under this condition, we can only monitor. This is the easiest we can do. And as far as the security is concerned, well, this is a good question, but the most dangerous thing for us was that we had no data migrating among the customers, but it's easy to check. So we've never had the case when somebody got somebody else's data. It would be quite unpleasant for us. Thank you for the presentation, and based on the answer to the previous question, I understand that the test stand was infrastructurally was not compliant. No, it was, but we couldn't provide same load on it. It was just slower. Same thing, but slower. That's why, yes, we get the question. If it was possible to make load testing on the test send and then scale it up to the real prod. Sometimes we did that, sometimes, because, for example, we had a task to optimize. Some customer created a lot of instances, and we could make it on the test end, and then we could check whether it's stuck or not. If in our slow test end all these 10 instances are processed normally, 50,000, 100,000, then it will be more than million or 10 millions processed in the prod successfully. I don't know your backend, but if there is replication of databases used there, so whether it was compliant or was it just a small copy of the prod? Yeah, it's same code, some small changes connected with this difference, but at the level of the database, we have separate database there. So we have different data, one for QA at the stage different and different at the prod. Thank you. Any other questions?